Hey everyone, so welcome to Chapter 9. And Chapter 9 deals with political parties. And the reason I'm trying to cover these next few chapters in the order that I am is because we're heading into an election in about 45 days, and I want you to sort of understand why it is that what political parties are, what they are not, the problem with political parties, and hopefully, you'll be able to make a decision about if you want to be affiliated with either one, or if you want to be an independent, which a lot of people are these days, meaning that you choose not to affiliate with one or the other. You just decide you want to be able to be a free-thinking individual. So that is, of course, totally up to you. Okay, so let's jump into this a little bit. So political parties basically are like interest groups. Their goal is to basically organize and run elections. They are people who have common ideas or opinions about policies and laws and issues, and they form committees or groups or organizations to be able to put forward their ideas in a collective way. They do nominate candidates, and they are supposed to inform the voters about their issues so that they can basically sway you to join their ideas or their causes. And there's nothing wrong with this, by the way. It's natural that we're naturally group beings. So being part of a group is nothing that's uncommon. However, when you involve yourself with groups, it doesn't mean you have to believe every issue of that group. You might be part of a group that you say, well, I agree with this, but I don't agree with that. And that's perfectly fine too. I think sometimes people join these groups or these interest groups thinking that they have to agree with every aspect, and that's not true at all. And if you don't, you can do other things. You don't have to be completely sold by one or the other. So again, the idea is that these are people, if you're part of a political party, again, you have a similar interest with these people and their ideas. Sometimes you have to be very careful not to be overly influenced by other people and their rhetoric. But this is, kind of where we find ourselves today with political parties. It's very controversial. They are not very well rated. In fact, if you were grading, the latest polls show that basically political parties, because of all the lack of cooperation or ability to work cooperatively together, is almost zero. And they're so polarized on fringe issues, and the people who really suffer because of that are all of us. So while as you can see here, one of the most important aspects of this particular PowerPoint slide is the bullet point that says gain control of the government by winning elections. Now, there are 330 million people here in the United States approximately, and the idea of, when you think about when the onus becomes of just the idea of winning, and instead of, how do we serve the American people, for example, winning takes over more than taking care of the people. And a lot of times that's what we've seen reflected in the laws and policies that have come out. Otherwise, we, the people, wouldn't be struggling with, all the high tax rates. We wouldn't be struggling with high food rates, high rents. None of that stuff would happen if we, the people, were doing a better job of making sure that those political parties that we supposedly support were actually doing things to protect us or to help us. And we're talking about, these people reside within the U.S. Congress, both the House and the Senate. So, and also at state legislators as well. They set their political party and interests, sometimes even over the Constitution. And that's the part that's much more frightening. So instead of adhering to the laws and policies that were put into this amazing document, they will look at their own personal interests first and the interests of their group over the Constitution. So again, their job is to inform voters of the issues, coordinate political campaigns, mobilize the voters, get them out to vote on issues. Those things are all viable things, but there's a healthy, proper way to do it, and there's ways that can make it very toxic, where we see ourselves now fighting against one another. The toxicity in our politics is at a highest level it's probably been in very, very long time, and it's like a us versus them, and everybody hates everybody else who doesn't think like them. And that's an unfortunate place to be, but that's where we find ourselves today. So, people who, have to, when you're part of the political party, there's a structure in place, and when the voters identify themselves with a certain political party, as I said, people like to be part of the group. And so when you talk about party organization, there is a formal structure for political parties and how they coordinate their activities and their behaviors, and how the parties operate in government is based on the officials that they elect into Congress or other public offices to be able to serve the interests or ideas of that political party. And again, the party platform is really basically the issues how the party views a particular issue, right? And it could be on climate change, it could be on the gun control, it could be on abortion rights, all those different things. That political parties have a particular interest or a platform. Now, it doesn't mean everybody who, again, as I said earlier, from that political party or who's affiliated with that political party agrees with every aspect of the platform. That's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be able to look through your own lens. You might support 70%, 50% of the platform, but it doesn't mean you have to support everything that's part of that platform, and still be a member of that party. I meant to back up and say, they do help guide, when drafting legislation to support the issues that are relevant to the political party. So normally what happens when you go through this process, and we have the electoral system and this two-party, even though it says we're a two-party system, we're actually more than a two-party system. We're actually a multi-party system. And we have parties that transcend on the fringe that the two main parties have basically pushed out, and they have very little power because the Democrats and Republicans have managed to control the primary process for a very long time. But again, the minor parties really don't have a lot of control in our system. So, for example, they use an example of the Populist Party or Progressive Party. These are, again, fringe element parties that have their own issues. Not that they're not valid, but sometimes they can be seen as extremist, both on the right, the conservative side, and the left. But these issues are issues that sometimes are if the conservatives need the support of one of the say the far right, then they may the far right conservatives, then they may add some of their issues to their agenda that end up skewing the real interests of the party further to the right than they thought they necessarily should be, because they need those votes from the fringe elements. And the same could be said of the Democrats or liberals on the other side. Yes, they are very complex organizations because they do operate at both the state, local, and national levels. And they have to be able to adjust and adapt as their constituents or their electorate changes. But because of the fact that, so they talk about divided government. And this is basically, for example, if the president is, let's say, a Democrat or liberal, and the Congress, houses in Congress, or even if one house is liberal and the other house is conservative, is run by conservatives in the majority, then policies don't get done. One tries to subvert the other because of their view of the world. The unfortunate part is what's hurting us is that there's a lack of cooperation in this. So while it's okay to disagree, they end up polarizing themselves and just dig themselves in instead of somebody reaching across the aisle and going, hey, let's find a meeting point somewhere in the middle that we can kind of agree with, where we both gain a little and we both may lose a little, but we find a balance in there. So it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. It might be a 50-50. We both win something and we both give up something. There's also internal divisions. So, right, like I said, say if you're a conservative, you might be a moderate conservative, and then you have the far right extremists who have another whole agenda, like January 6th, for example, would be an example of that. And you might say, well, okay, so I'm over here to the more moderate side of it. Then you've got people who are hardliners who are looking to do everything else aside from what you think should be done. And that becomes much more problematic inside organizations and can impede their ability to do anything, even within their own political party. Again, it's been a very strong bent toward extremist ideology, particularly with gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is when they basically redistrict states to serve a specific interest, or like, say, for example, if African Americans were broken down into several different regions within a state, and then they kind of cut the state up in different pieces to so that they are a smaller voice instead of having a voice in multiple different districts within that state. They try to cut the state up where say African Americans or Latinos could be in one little area, and that way they have very little impact on the politics that come out of that state. Again, when we talk about the realignment of parties, this basically depends on demographics. And again, as the issues change, political parties change. And this can be good or bad depending on what the issues are. There have been lots of historical examples when parties realigned. One of the major ones happened in 1960. Before 1960, the liberals were the Republicans and the Democrats were conservative. And then in that's why when people say that the Republicans are the party of Lincoln, I'm like, maybe on paper because he was a Republican, but in truth, they are nothing like the party of Lincoln. And nobody ever says that, which is kind of funny to me, but they really aren't. I mean, the ideology of the current modern Republican Party is nothing like what the idea of Lincoln, what Lincoln what he proposed in his time. So in 1960, John Kennedy, who was the first Catholic president of our country, it's amazing to think that if you were Catholic, no one thought you were probably not electable through most of the last 200 years of our country. If you were Catholic, you were not going to be president. So by virtue of John Kennedy's father, Joseph Kennedy, being super rich and being able to pull political favors, he was able to get his son in the door. But at that time, the Democrats and Republicans changed. All the Southern Democrats, they literally left the Democratic Party because they hated Kennedy, and they joined the Republican Party. And so there was this crisscross, if you would, of ideologies that altered the political landscape from 1960 to this day of what it meant to be a Republican, what it means to be a Democrat today. So we talk about FDR's New Deal, which was a coalition of new social and economic programs that happened after the Great Depression. The idea of including, formerly excluded voters like African Americans have led, and the increase of that happens in 1965 with the Voting Rights Act really helped propel and change and push the Democrats to dominance in the more modern era. So when we talk about, yes, we could compare how other countries operate their systems, and that's more of a global perspective thing where you looking at the parliamentary system in England and the House of Commons and the House of Lords and how they create and run their political party and platforms. Most of those parties out in the democratic socialist countries of Europe are multi-party systems. They're not just two-party systems, but two dominant parties. And a lot of times those parties can share governance. We're the ones who are really locked down and so vastly polarized where we can't seem to function as well. And not that the other ones don't, but it's rare to see them be so bound and tied the way that we are in the United States. So again, while I would say that having political parties and those that have certain interests are really important in a democratic society, but it also requires us, the people, to be able to be conscious and responsible and respect the rule of law and respect the Constitution and recognize that political parties really aren't that big of a deal in some way, shape, or form. In fact, the Founding Fathers did not have a flavor for them. Most of the Founding Fathers disdained them because they realized the danger and polarization and partisanship within inside of these political platforms. But it does require us in a democracy, for us, the people, to be more participatory, to make sure that there is a fair balance within the system. So that if you're, for example, if you're a conservative, yes, some of your conservative issues and interests should be served. Just like if you're a liberal, some of them should be served. But it's also about respecting the differences and finding as much balance as we can so everybody gets a chance to win, to gain, and very little to lose. And most people, ironically, I used to do this test in my classes for years where I put a list of issues and I had students check off, which various issues, without knowing whether it's liberal or conservative. And the students, I said, now think about what you are. If you call yourself a Republican or a conservative or a liberal, and then look at what you check. And shockingly, some of these students didn't realize that they were either people who thought they were conservative or really actually liberal, or they were more moderate than they realized. Because you could agree on, you may want gun control, but you might believe in right to life, for example. Well, what does that make you? Well, it puts you somewhere in the middle. Okay, so does it really matter? Well, it shouldn't, but it does in our society. But you should be able to be a free-thinking individual and make decisions free of encumberment of any political party. Um, so I encourage you to do so. In my opinion, humble opinion, is to be a free-thinking individual. Look at your own personal values and the things that you think are important in your own integrity, and challenge yourself to make sure we elect people into our political parties and political system who are going to sit in these political parties, who reflect those same things, who reflect your integrity, your interests, your values. And those types of things. So that's a thing. I think the challenge for us, the people, as we develop and grow politically through our years of growth from 17 or 18, or I should say 18 till you're an old person, that you grow continually and reevaluate where you are politically as you learn more information. All right, that's it for chapter 9. I will see you in the next chapter. Have a great day.